Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට My SLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට My SLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දැන් Signal Herbal 99ක් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල සමග සටන් කරයි.
Tonight, the eye of the storm. China defends forthcoming visit of its research and survey vessel to Sri Lanka as India raises concerns.
The government carefully monitors any development having a bearing on India's security and economic interests and takes all necessary measures to safeguard them. I think that should be a clear message.
New system. With less than 48 hours of island-wide implementation of the National Fuel Pass system, the number of stations adopting the QR code system reaches record high. The best way. Debating or analysing reasons for economic crisis is not the way forward, but an all-party government is, says President Vijayasingha. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Saturday, the 30th of July 2022.
Vim Deera milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Your top stories for tonight. Sri Lanka is in the crosshairs of brewing tensions between two of our region's superpowers as a Chinese research and survey vessel with capacity to monitor ballistic missiles and space activity is expected to reach Sri Lanka's Hambantota port next month. The vessel's arrival has prompted a response from immediate neighbour and superpower India, claiming concerns over security and economic interests to India. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, meanwhile, response stated that if they hoped the relevant parties will refrain from interfering with normal and legitimate maritime activities. A Chinese research and survey vessel named Yuan Wang 5 with capacity to conduct surveillance on space, satellites and ballistic missiles is expected to reach the Hambantota port in southern Sri Lanka on the 11th of August. The purpose of the vessel's voyage to Sri Lanka is to monitor space and satellite activity in the northwest Indian Ocean region. The ship reportedly departed the port of Jiangyin in China on the 13th of July. With the impending visit of the Chinese vessel notified, it has drawn the attention of Sri Lanka's immediate neighbour India, who is now raising concern over the purpose of the superpower's vessel voyage. According to Reuters news agency, India has already lodged a verbal protest with Sri Lankan government against the ship's visit to the island nation. Meanwhile, the spokesperson for the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, Arindam Bagchi, spoke on the matter during a media briefing on Thursday, saying India would closely monitor the situation.
Chinese scientific research vessel called Yuan Wang 5 is poised to enter Hambantota on 11th August for a week. Now, is this something that the Indian government will watch closely?
We are aware of reports of a proposed visit by this vessel at Hambantota port in August. Let me just say that government carefully monitors any development having a bearing on India's security and economic interests and takes all necessary measures to safeguard them. I think that should be a clear message.
According to Reuters, China too has responded to the comments made by the Indian External Affairs Ministry. China's Foreign Ministry has said that it hoped relevant parties would refrain from interfering with normal and legitimate maritime activities. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has also called to view and report on China's marine scientific research activities correctly. In the meantime, AdaDerana spoke to the media spokesperson at the Ministry of Defence for a clarification on the matter. According to the media spokesperson, the Defence Ministry of Sri Lanka is currently studying the request made by the Chinese vessel to dock at the Hambantota port. Sri Lanka is yet to make a final decision. The spokesperson went on to say that it is common for commercial and military vessels from India, China, Russia, Germany, Japan and Australia to arrive in Sri Lanka subject to approval of Sri Lankan authorities. Now, the Ministry of Power and Energy said that the highest number of refilling stations to adopt the QR system at their refilling stations was recorded yesterday, with the ministry placing the figure at 657 filling stations. So far, a total of 962 refilling stations have adopted the National Fuel Pass system, just one day before the system becomes mandatory and the only system for fuel dispensing. The Ministry of Power and Energy earlier said that the National Fuel Pass system will be operational from the 1st of August at filling stations island-wide, invalidating all other fuel distribution methods. After months of uncertainty and a lack of a system for fuel distribution to the general public, the National Fuel Pass system was introduced by the Ministry of Power and Energy, giving people the promise for a fuel system and procedure at refilling stations. The system has been tested in selected fuel stations, making progress towards full implementation across the country. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Vijayasingha said 657 fuel stations newly adopted the QR system yesterday, making it the highest number of fuel stations adopting the platform in a single day. As such, a total of 962 refilling stations are now compatible with the system. The quick adoption of the process is due to the ministry's announcement that the National Fuel Pass would be the only way in which fuel can and will be dispensed from the 1st of August. Anyone violating the directive will be revoked of their ability to issue fuel, and no fuel will be supplied to such refilling stations. The ministry stated that priority in the distribution of fuel will be given to all fuel stations that have successfully adopted the National Fuel Pass system. Until the 1st of August, the Fuel Pass system and the issuance of fuel based on days assigned to the last digit of the vehicle number plate is in operation simultaneously. However, the ministry stated that all those who have faced difficulty in registering with the National Fuel Pass system can instead register with their revenue license numbers from tomorrow. Further, the Minister of Power and Energy stated that steps will be taken to reserve a quota of fuel at selected filling stations for the police department. Accordingly, each police station in the country will be allocated stocks of fuel required for its operations. In other developments, police stated that 13 people have been arrested over unruly behavior at refilling stations since yesterday. In the meantime, some others have been arrested by police for illegally hoarding fuel and selling at exorbitant prices. A few incidents of this nature were reported yesterday when an individual was caught in Hungama area in Hambantota with 1,350 litres of diesel hoarded in 7 barrels. He was arrested by the anti-corruption unit of the Tangal police. Elsewhere, a 40-year-old man who had been illegally stocking 550 litres of diesel at his house in the area of Omantha in Kandy was arrested. With this being the case, the Ministry of Power and Energy appealed to the general public to send videos or photo evidence of people hoarding, illegally selling fuel, or not following instructions on fuel distribution. The public is encouraged to send the evidence to 074 212 3123. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says debating over reasons for the country's economic state isn't the solution to the dire economic crisis faced by the people, but an all-party government is the best way forward. The head of state went on to say that if it wasn't for the protest, it was arranged to enter a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund by July and have it approved by the 1st of August. Nevertheless, President Wickremesinghe went on to say that the IMF funds alone will not be the solution to the current crisis. President Ranil Wickremesinghe visited the Sri Dalada Maligawa in Kandy and paid homage to the sacred tooth relic today. The head of state welcomed to the Diyavadana Nilame of the Temple of the Tooth, Pradeep Nilanga Delabandara. The president then visited the Malvatta temple in Kandy. Traditionally, after a new president is appointed, the head of state visits the Malvatta temple where the official reception is held to invoke blessings. For this occasion, the chief prelate of the Malvatta chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera, and other Buddhist clergy were present. Later, the head of state paid a visit to the Askiriya temple. Upon arrival at the temple, President Ranil Wickremesinghe was welcomed by the chief prelate of the Askiriya chapter, Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera. Later on, President Wickremesinghe chaired a meeting at the President's house in Kandy. The meeting was attended by members of Parliament from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, as well as United National Party members and advisors to the President.
මම ජනාධිපතිකම බාරගත්තත් මේ රටේ තියෙන ආර්ථික පීඩනය නැති වෙලා නැහැ. ජනතාවට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ වගේම තියෙනවා. ගෑස් නැති එක, පෝර නැති එක, ඉන්ධන නැති එක, බඩු මිල වැඩි වෙන එක, රැකියාව නැති වෙන එක, සංවර්ධනයට ප්‍රාග්ධනය නැති වෙන එක, මුදල් නැති වෙන එක මේ හැම එකක්ම මේ ගම්මානවල තියෙනවා. අද අපේ රටේ තියෙන ආර්ථික තත්ත්වය කිව්වොත් මේක තවත් වැටුනොත් රටක් නැති වෙනවා. අපි දැන් සාකච්ඡා කරගෙන ගියා මේ අවුරුද්දේ අපේ ආර්ථිකය දලදේශීය නිෂ්පාදනය 7%කින් අඩු වෙනවා. මේවට විසඳුම් හොයන්න තියෙනවා. විසඳුම් හොයාගෙන නැතුව පරණ සටන් පාට කියලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් සමහරු කියනවා ආර්ථික අර්බුදය ඇති උනේ ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ ජනාධිපතිතුමා පෝර ගෙනාවේ නැති නිසා කියලා. අපි කියනවා මේක ඇති උනේ IMF සංවිධානයට වෙලාවට ගියේ නැති කියලා කියලා. පොදු ජන පෙරමුණෙන් කියනවා මේක ඇති උනේ මේ ආණ්ඩුව විතර නෙමෙයි ඊට ඉස්සෙල්ලා ආණ්ඩුවත් විශාල ණයක් ගත්ත නිසා. ඉතින් මං අහන්නේ දැන් මේවා අපි වාද කරනවද නැත්නම් වැඩ කරනවද? සමහරු කියනවා පෙළපාලි දානවා කියලා රනිල් ගෙදර යන්න කියලා. මම කියනවා කරුණාකරලා ඒක කරන්න එපා. මට යන්න ගයක් නැහැ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ලෑස්ති නම් විශාල සෙනගක් ගියෙන්න මාස 6කට මම ගෙදර හදලා දෙන්න. මගේ ගෙදර හදලා මං ගියන් පස්සේ ගෙදර පහු කරලා යන්න රනිල් ගෙදර යන්න කියලා. නැත්නම් වැඩක් නැහැ නේ ගෙදර නැති මිනිහට ගෙදර යන්න කියලා. නිකන් කාලේ නාස්ති කරන එකන්නේ. එදා කරන වැඩ කටයුතු නැති වෙන එකන්නේ. එන් දෙක එකක් ගම හදන්න නැත්නම් මම ගෙදර හදන්න. ඒත් රනිල් ගෙදර යන්න කියලා කියන්න එපා. ඉතින් අපි ඉන්නේ පරණ දේශපාලනේ. මම අගමැති වෙලා මුදල් ඇමතිගෙන් පසු IMF සංවිධානයක සාකච්ඡා කරා. මේවට අපි සාකච්ඡා කළා විසඳුම් ගණනාවක් හොයාගෙන ආවා. මගේ පරමාර්ථය උනේ ජූලි මාසෙදී එකඟත්වයකට ඇවිල්ලා අගෝස්තු 1 වෙනි සතියේ IMF මණ්ඩලයෙන් අනුමත කරගන්න. ඒ ජනවාරි 9 වෙනිදා ඉඳන් අද වෙනකම් මුකුත් තිබුණේ නැහැ. දැන් ඒක කල් යනවා අගෝස්තු මාසේ අන්තිමට. මොකද පළවෙනි සතියෙන් පස්සේ නිවාඩු කාලේ. ඒකට අපිට අනුමත කරන්න පුළුවන් සැප්තැම්බර් මාසේ විතරයි. මේ සංවිධාන ඔක්කොමෙන් උනේ මේක කල් ගියා. මේ එකඟත්වය නැතුව වෙන කවුරුවත් මුදල් දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි තවත් මේ දේශපාලනේ යනවාද? අපි අලුතෙන් හිතන්නත් ඕනේ. මේ තරුණයෝ ඉස්සෙල්ලාම අරගල භූමියට ආවේ මේ රටේ ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ උමනයි කියලා. ඒ ගැන මට කිසිම විවාදයක් නැහැ. ඒක වෙනත් අය අරගෙන ප්‍රචණ්ඩ යොමු කරා. මං IMF ගිහින් අපි දිගියුසුමක් ගත්තා. එහෙන් මෙහෙන් සල්ලි ගත්තා කියලා හිතන්න එපා ප්‍රශ්න ඉවරයි කියලා. අපේ ණය බර තව වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපි කොහොමද මේ ණය ගෙවන්නේ? අපි වැඩි විදේශ විනිමය උමනයි. අලුත් මාර්ග උමනයි. මොකද අපි මෙතන මේ වැඩ කටයුත්ත බාරගත්තේ නැත්නම් අභියෝග ගන්න නැත්නම් මේ රට නැති වෙනවා. ඊළඟ පරම්පරාව අපිට සාප කරනවා. අපේ පළවෙනි යුතුයකම නීතිය සාමය ආරක්ෂා කරන්න. කොයි පක්ෂේ වුණා. මං කිසි දවසක ගෙවල් පුච්චන වැඩසටහනකට ගිනි තියෙන වැඩසටහන එකඟ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි එකතු වෙලා මේ පණිවිඩය දෙමු. මං ඒකයි හැම පක්ෂ නායකයෝ ලියලා ආරාධනා කරේ අපි සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවක් ඇති කරමු කියලා. මේ රටේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳන්න හොඳම එක සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුව. ඒක සියලු දෙනාම පිළිගන්න එක. කවුරුත් ඒ ගැන වාද කරන්නේ නැහැ.
Now, the man who stole the president's official flag and used it as a bedsheet has been remanded until the 5th of August. Protesters stormed key administrative buildings in Colombo on the 9th of July, including the President's House and Presidential Secretariat. The suspect who stole the President's official flag was produced before the Colombo Magistrates Court earlier today. He was taken into custody after he surrendered to the Valikadia police last morning. On the 9th of July, people in large numbers thronged Colombo to take part in the mass protest demonstration against the government over economic mismanagement and corruption. As the demonstrations made strides, the protesters stormed the President's house in Colombo among several other state buildings and continued to occupy the premises for several days. Police have already commenced investigating into crimes committed at these buildings during the time it was occupied by protesters. Now we'll be back with more news after this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Now all government and government-approved schools will continue to function during regular hours on Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays from the 1st to the 5th of August. Meanwhile, home-based learning activities or online teaching will be provided on Wednesdays and Fridays when lessons are not delivered on site. The decision was taken following a virtual meeting chaired by Education Minister. It was attended by the Education Secretary and other ministerial officials. The Ministry of Education, however, said in schools where students and teachers are not severely affected by transport facilities, on-site lessons can be delivered on Wednesdays and Fridays, as well as at the discretion of the school principal, teachers and zonal director of education. Now, US Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chung, says the United States stands ready to address human trafficking and will support the efforts of Sri Lanka in fulfilling this purpose. Speaking at an event to launch Project Impact to combat human trafficking, she commended efforts of Sri Lankan government in combating human trafficking. The launch of Impact, a project funded from the US Department of State's Office to monitor and combat trafficking in persons, an international organization for migration to combat human trafficking in Sri Lanka, was held in Colombo yesterday. The project, spanning 3 years, aims to strengthen national and local or community level capacities and scale up community-driven responses to effectively combat and respond to trafficking in persons.
Last week, the State Department's Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons released its annual TIP report. We commend the government for their increasing efforts to combat human trafficking this past year, which resulted in an upgrade to Tier 2 in this year's report after 3 years of Sri Lanka being on the report's Tier 2 watch list. We applaud the government's efforts to establish a specialized unit to strengthen trafficking investigations, identify more trafficking victims, and increase coordination among government agencies. But there's much more work to be done, as we all know, and we look forward to continued progress over the year ahead to ensure that traffickers are held accountable for their crimes and victims' protections continue to increase, especially for those, the most vulnerable people in the population. Each year, the TIP report includes a list of prioritized recommendations for governments to further their anti-trafficking efforts over the next year. As we mark the launch of this new project, we are encouraged that it will support several key recommendations from the 2022 TIP report, including proactive victim identification, improving services for people who have been trafficked, and strengthening efforts to combat child sex tourism. It will also promote safe and legal migration and help facilitate sustained government coordination to fully address human trafficking crimes. These recommendations will not be easy to accomplish, but I want to assure you that the United States stands ready to assist as we work together to address human trafficking.
Now, oil prices jumped more than $4 a barrel as attention turned to next week's OPEC Plus meeting and dimming expectations that the producer group will boost supply. Brent crude futures for September settlement due to expire on Friday gained $3.29 or 3.1% to trade at 110.43 cents $1 a barrel after touching their highest since the 5th of July. The more active October contract was up $4.42 at $106.25. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose $4.85 or 5% to $101.27 a barrel. Both contracts were set for a weekly rise of about 7%, but also on track for a second monthly loss, with Brent down 3.8% for July and WIT down 4.2%. Emphasizing the importance of fair play by all stakeholders of the economy in countering the current unprecedented economic crisis, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka today warned against those who flout regulatory measures that have been implemented to ensure adequate foreign exchange liquidity in the banking system of the country. Issuing a statement, CBSL said that the government and the central bank have been implementing several measures to ease the burden of the current economic hardships on the people. To ensure adequate foreign exchange liquidity in the banking system, the CBSL had to impose surrender requirements on export earnings. Further measures were taken by the government and the CBSL to discourage foreign exchange outflows, such as imposing restrictions on certain imports and payment terms and introducing margin requirements, while encouraging foreign inflows through the banking system rather than those being challenged through the grey market. However, CBSL says that it has been brought to their notice that certain market players are not being fully compliant with these regulations. The central bank, in their best interest of the nation, said that all these efforts would be taken to strictly monitor and ensure compliance with all regulations to foreign exchange transactions. Now, China has signaled that it may miss its annual economic growth target as COVID restrictions weigh on the world's second largest economy. On Thursday, the political of the ruling Communist Party's top policy markings body said that it aims to keep growth within a reasonable range, although it did not mention the official growth target. China is continuing to pursue a zero-COVID policy that has put major cities into full or partial lockdown. In a statement after its quarterly economic meeting, the 25-member Politburo, which is chaired by President Xi Jinping, has said leaders would strive to achieve the best results possible. However, it also called stronger provinces to work to meet their growth target. Now, Indonesia blocked search engine website Yahoo payments from PayPal and several gaming websites due to failure to comply with licensing rules, sparking a backlash on social media. Registration is required under rules released in late November 2020 and will give authorities broad powers to compel platforms to disclose data of certain users and take down content deemed unlawful or that disturbs public order within 4 hours if urgent and 24 hours is not. Several tech companies had rushed to register in days leading up to the deadline, which had been extended until Friday, including the Alphabet Inc.'s Google, Meta Platforms Incorporated Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, and Amazon.com Incorporated. Authorities would unblock the websites if they comply with the registration rules, according to a government official quoted by Reuters. With an estimated 191 million internet users and a young social media savvy population, the Southeast Asian nation is a significant market for a host of tech platforms. But Indonesia says the largest measure is to protect the country's internet users. Now, Royal College Colombo won the 45th annual limited over cricket encounter with St Thomas College, Mount Lavinia by 8 wickets. Played at the SSC grounds, St Thomas's College won the toss and elected to bat first. Muiz Naushan scored 50 runs while Mahit Pereira remained unbeaten at a score of 52. Ryan Gunawardana contributed to the St Thomas's innings with 30 runs. At the end of 50 overs, the Thomians scored 190 runs for the loss of 8 wickets. Both skippers Sudisha Rajapaksa and Dumit Kappagoda bagged 2 wickets each from the Thomian innings. Royal College, however, passed the target in 43.1 overs by losing just 2 wickets and retained the Mustang Trophy. Skipper Sudisha Rajapaksa scored an outstanding knock of 69 runs and remained unbeaten, while Sineth Jayawardena scored 39 runs. Uvindu Weerasekara and Ovina Avanpola scored 35 runs each. After 45 encounters, Royal led the tally with 22 wins against 21 wins for St Thomas. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. Have a good night.